This is particularly obvious in the Jewish instance, for among these people the power of intercession had been comparatively slightly developed as a doctrine. But among the Kabbalists it arises in a very powerful way. We find also in India the strict teachings of Buddha are enlarged. Buddha passed through two processes after his death. By one of these processes he was deified, and by the other process he was, we will say, absolved into a structure of bodhisattvas, of celestial beings and attendants who ministered to the spiritual needs of mankind. A Savior concept emerged. Now, at almost exactly the time of the rise of the mystical dispensation in Christendom, the Buddhist concept evolved their belief in a deity whom they called Amitabha, the Buddha of boundless light. This Amitabha power was seated like a remote deity in the effulgency of space. But Amitabha was not a god in fact or substance. Amitabha was a human being deified by merit. After Amitabha had preserved his vow, or kept his great vow, which he made before attaining to the estate of an arhat, he became the ruler of the Golden Land, the land of peace, the New Jerusalem of Christianity, the city four square, represented often in this actual way in China, Tibet, and Japan. Amitabha then caused to emerge from his own nature the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, his beloved son. This Bodhisattva became his representative, his intercessor. And it is in the keeping of this Bodhisattva that Amitabha entrusted his world. And it was the duty and responsibility of Avalokitesvara to bring all souls to salvation through the grace of his own nature. Now, this concept was in vogue in Asia, rising mysteriously and miraculously in the 1st century A.D. Avalokitesvara later becomes a male-female being, and in China and Japan is often disassociated entirely from its masculine attributes to become Kuan Yin or Kannon, a purely feminine representation, now depicted carrying a small child in her arms. And this particular circumstance so disconcerted the first Christian missionaries in the area that they were convinced that in some way these people were perverting the idea of the Virgin Mary. But here we have this concept arising on the opposite side of the world. We have a similar concept gradually unfolding into the later religion of the Egyptians, where a comparatively unimportant local deity, Osiris, finally became the principal deity of Egypt, and then became the father of his own mysteriously, immaculately conceived son, Horus, who in turn becomes the Savior of the world. The story of Horus is almost identically, in function, the story of Avalokitesvara. We find also in many other systems either personified beings representing salvation, as in the emergence of the Persian Mithras, but we also find the rise of doctrines of salvation revealed by beings who so loved mankind that they opened the royal roads of revelation. The whole picture fits together in a strange and interesting manner. Now, in the beginning of Amidaism, as it is called in Japan, or the doctrine of Amitabha, we have the meaning. The Amitabha exists in two forms in Chinese Tibetan philosophy. One is Amitabha, the Buddha of boundless light. The other is Amitayas, the Buddha of boundless life. These two are reflexes of each other, and in the Tibetan art are regarded as aspects of one being. And the Word was light, and the light was the life of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not. This is practically a Christian statement of Buddhist philosophy. Now, how did the doctrine get across? Or, let us go to the Kabbalah now. The Kabbalists no longer accepted the mysterious name of deity that is concealed under the acrostic of the Tetragrammaton, or the great name of four letters, which we have translated Jehovah. They declared that the mysterious power at the root of life, the Ancient of Days, that power which is eternal and immovable, is of a triadic nature, represented by three words: Ein, boundlessness. That is that which is foreverness of its own eternal nature. That which goes on without beginning or end. Representing an essence, a principle unchanging unto infinity. That never this power was born, that this power shall never die. But very much like the effort made by Aristotle to establish the causelessness of first cause, simply represents the fact that causation is itself eternal. That causation is both a motion and a substance, existing forever. This is almost identically the statement of Lao Tzu in describing the nature of Tao. And this was the same doctrine which at the beginning of the first century took over in China, at about the same period that we find it rising in North Africa, the Near East, and Southern Europe. Out of the nature of Ein comes Ein Sof. And Ein Sof is the boundless life. And out of the boundless life comes Ein Sofer in the ancient Kabbalah. And that is the boundless light. So being, life, and light constitute the basic triad of the Kabbalah. Being, life, and light constitute the basic triad of Mahayana Buddhism. There is no essential difference. There is only such difference as would be inevitably the result of translation from one language to another. So Buddhism no longer remained a doctrine of the world of illusion and the total reality of a nirvana beyond. It now became a world filled with being, life, and light. And this triad became gradually further exemplified out of the nature of Amitabha, by the rise of this triad, consisting of Amitayas, Avalokitesvara, and Daisechi. The being